All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Peter Walk. I'm the Managing Director of Efficiency Vermont. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Um, really appreciate you taking the time. And for those who are going to watch the recording, thank you for catching up with the information we're going to provide today. I will take a moment to introduce the team here. Kelly, Hillary, Dave, do you want to pop on and introduce yourselves, please?
Hi, I'm Kelly Lucci. I'm the Director of Strategy and Partnerships for Efficiency Vermont, and I'm going to walk through some of the specifics around our programmatic offerings.
I'm Hillary Andrews, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications, and I'll talk a little bit about how we're planning to get the word out.
Hi, I'm Dave Westman. I'm the Director of Regulatory and State Agency Affairs. I'm overseeing the grant writing and application process for these funds, and I'm here to answer any questions if they come up.
Great. Thank you all. Well, really appreciate you being here. If you do have questions during the course of the webinar, please ask them so that we can try to answer them on the fly as much as possible. Do want to honor where we are in the recovery process. We are, a little over a month now since the floodwaters subsided, less so in some cases in parts of the state where storms continue to cause damage. The folks impacted by the floods have taken action already to replace systems, and some have not. And so we're going to talk about how some of these things integrate together, but understanding that this is sort of midstream along the way that we're going to continue to need to work through. When we started discussions with the Department of Public Service and the legislature and the governor's office about what this could look like, it really was first and foremost, how do we help folks get heat, hot water, and other basic appliances back in their homes before winter? While it is still August now, winter comes quickly in Vermont, and we need folks to be ready to be able to keep their families safe over the course of the winter. It's been a great partnership. As Dave mentioned, we've been working on a grant agreement with the Department of Public Service to get these monies flowing quickly. I have never seen a granting process or any process move as fast as it has. We started this process about August 1 with the emergency board action on July 31st and are close to having a signed agreement in place. And I've been working on all the programmatic details as we go. So if you want to go to the next slide, Matt. I think we missed one. Can you go back to the agenda? Oh, sorry, I was on the agenda. I'm still talking. So we're going to go through a little bit of what we've heard from customers, the proposal around how funding will work, what is or where the funding is coming from, what we have available now for folks to access, and then what will be coming in September, and then some of the work we're going to be doing to get the word out. So now if we can go to the next slide. These are just some of the testimonials that have come through our system. There are a number of different challenges out there. The challenges are unique. The experiences are varied, but folks have asked for and need help as the recovery process is both daunting from a capacity standpoint and from a financial standpoint. And so we're happy to come to the table with the partners here today to talk about what resources might be available to help folks. Next slide. You go to the next one too. All right, so we are there are a few pots of money that will come out sort of as part of this effort. As we mentioned, there was a state emergency board action on July 31st that enabled a shift of funding on the residential side from a pot of ARPA dollars that was going to go towards weatherization to be used for flood recovery work. That is subject to the grant agreement discussion with the Public Service Department and working on getting those rolled out now. Additionally, the PUC approved a petition from us with the support of the department to use some unspent electric efficiency charge money to provide support for businesses. That what we had a response from the PUC within a day of filing that work, so we are also working to roll out that money. Additionally, we have the support of the Agency of Natural Resources, who is supporting us to the tune of roughly $200,000, and we're planning to use that to provide support to contractors to help them be able to do this work and to support the overall recovery beyond the work they've been organically doing now. Next slide. Additionally, the Public Service Department has some additional ARPA funds that they would like to roll through this grant agreement as well, namely $5 million for heat pump hot water heaters. This is part of the Switch and Save program that was in the FY, I want to say 22 or 23 budget, and additionally some $19 million for electric panel upgrades. We and the department are focused on getting those funds out the door quickly and using partners to help us do that, to deploy those dollars as quickly as possible. We anticipate that some of those will be used through the sort of emergency flood response operations, and some of them will be used through the ARPA eligibility period, which ends in 2026. Next slide. As you know, this is pretty consistent. We've seen reports of the impact across the news for the last month and a half. There is a ton of impact. We don't have a full sense of how many of those homes are going to need the level of support that we've talked about here, we'll talk about here. But we want to make sure that we are ready and able to provide assistance where it's needed. I did want to mention that the emergency board capped the amount of eligible funding for each home to $10,000. Again, that is a legislative action that could be changed if things were changed, but that is what we are working with at this point. Next slide. And the other complicating factor, and this is really important for everybody who's been working in this space knows how complicated the FEMA process can be. But I wanted to sort of flag this as a key component of our efforts as we've been building out the programmatic elements of this. The goal of these dollars is to be additive to what Vermonters can access through the FEMA process. To be additive, that means that many things must occur before they can be applied for, or it jeopardizes that individual's access to FEMA dollars as well. There's a sort of two-part FEMA and Small Business Administration process. The first part is where much of the HVAC equipment gets caught up in, and then the second part is where many of the appliances that we might also consider covering in this process would be caught up, and that is a little bit more of a complicated process, and especially for the work we're talking about now, where the legislature has asked us, and our work will focus on low and moderate income populations, those with less than 120% of the area median income. And so we want to make sure that people can access as many resources as they can to help them get back on their feet, because we know that FEMA funds are capped to a certain amount, and reimbursement does not cover the full cost of rebuilding. So the more we can do to help people access and not jeopardize that funding, the better we will have served the folks who need the assistance. Next slide. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kelly Lucci, who will walk you through some of the programs that we have available now and that we'll be launching shortly.
Thanks, Peter. So wanted to just start off by noting programs that are already available and can be accessed by folks who have been impacted by flooding. Just to ground and yes, we're planning for several new streams of funding to be deployed starting in September, but there is support currently available through Efficiency Vermont that I just want to make sure we highlight. So first off, we stood up in the, say, 2 weeks after the flooding, some improvements to our virtual home energy visit process, designed specifically to support people who've been impacted by floods. And we currently have had some pretty strong uptake and interest from Vermonters who really just want to have somebody give them guidance on, what kind of heating system can they install in their home? How should they be thinking about weatherization? So that is up and running, and you can absolutely promote the availability of those visits now, if you think that that would be helpful. The process to get one of those is simply to call Efficiency Vermont's toll-free number and speak to our customer support team. They can sign somebody right up on the phone. Secondly, home energy loans are available and can be used to support heating equipment replacement and weatherization. Obviously, this is a major interest for folks, and we do provide buy downs to zero interest and buy downs to low interest rates for folks who are moderate and low income customers to leverage that. We've seen some increased interest following the flood, and we know that VSECU is leveraging home energy loan in combination with some of their other products to try to meet the needs of folks comprehensively participating in that program. I also just wanted to highlight, there is other funding that we have recently increased for weatherization for low and moderate income customers and for market rate customers in support of weatherization. We now offer 75% of project costs back up to $4,000 for market rate customers, and 75% of project costs up to $9,500 for income eligible customers. So there's significant support out there for weatherization, and we're looking at how we can make some tweaks to the program, specifically to ensure contractors are in a position to really work with customers who've been impacted by flooding and want to weatherize and build back better. Finally, I did just want to note, last week we had a webinar which had more than 200 participants, very many customers who were looking for that specific kind of technical guidance and support for how to rebuild their home. There was a lot of great information shared. The recording is available here. We'll share the slide deck, but certainly if people are looking for answers to common questions related to rebuilding after a flood, that's a great resource that anybody can listen to. You can absolutely feel free to share with your networks as well. So with that, next slide. I want to talk a little bit more about the specifics of what's launching in September with the funding resources that Peter highlighted in his introduction. So planned relief is going to be focused on the residential side on both renters and homeowners. Very important from our perspective to ensure we're meeting the needs of renters as well as folks who own their homes. However, the focus of these programs is going to be on income eligible folks, so low and moderate income customers who are below 120% area median income. The best way to kind of understand eligibility is to leverage the same income charts that we have on our website. I think we've got some links later in the slide deck for the home performance incentives and for home energy loan participation. We try to keep it consistent across all programs. The reason for this limitation is really looking at the original funding source that it came from, which was intended to support low and moderate income weatherization, and just recognizing we want to make sure that the customers who need the support the most are getting the initial prioritization. Rental property owners will also be eligible. We're anticipating basing that qualification on the rent levels that they offer, which is consistent with current Efficiency Vermont practice. So many of our affordable housing partners will be familiar with this approach. I did also want to note, as we're designing the program, though, we're taking into account the fact that rental property owners are also eligible for the BGAP program, the business flood recovery program that's currently being supported by ACCD. So we're working to coordinate with them and make sure that customers are able to stack offers where appropriate, and that we're leveraging these funds to truly fill gaps that exist. So to walk through some more details on what we're anticipating supporting through these programs, we're talking about home heating and cooling systems, both primary and supplemental. We're anticipating that some customers may approach us and say, I want to replace my existing heating system with something that's more efficient, and I want to explore heating electrification, or my experience with the flood makes me want to have more diversity in my heating systems so I can be more resilient in the future. And we want to make sure the program will be able to support that type of decision making by customers. So to be more specific, we're talking about ducted and ductless heat pumps, central wood pellet systems, wood or pellet stoves, as well as an option for Energy Star rated fossil fuel boilers and furnaces, because we recognize a lot of customers, may not be in a position to fully electrify yet, and we want to make sure that we're helping meet their urgent need to ensure they've got heating going into the winter. Domestic hot water systems, which could be a heat pump water heater or an Energy Star rated fossil fuel or electric system. And then appliance replacement is a major need. We've talked about, I think Peter highlighted, the FEMA process can look a little bit different depending on whether you're looking to replace appliances or heating systems. So we're working through to make sure that the messaging in our program sort of appropriately accounts for that. But we have heard from a lot of customers who've had appliances impacted and are looking for some support beyond what they might be able to get through baseline programs. So we're looking at refrigerators, freezers. We've heard from a lot of people with chest freezers that were impacted, washers and dryers, window AC units, dehumidifiers, and air purifiers. The last two obviously being health measures that can be very helpful for folks coming out of flooding. I did want to note very specifically that we're going to allow for reimbursement for eligible purchases retroactive to July 10th, because as Peter noted, we recognize people have been having to make decisions up until this point already, and we want to support folks who may have who may have a need for that support but had to move more quickly than a program can be enrolled. There is a link here to a qualified product list where folks can explore what products are likely to be eligible. And we're certainly happy to engage with customers on a case-by-case basis and make sure we're understanding what their current needs are. Next slide, please. So just some context on the likely requirements and qualification process. We want to make sure this is open for folks who might not be eligible for the full amount of FEMA support. We recognize this has been a slowly unfolding disaster situation for a lot of folks. There are some counties that have not been deemed eligible for the full FEMA emergency status. So if you are, as a customer in one of the counties that has been declared major disaster area, we're going to ask for an attestation, sort of a self statement that you have submitted for FEMA support if you're eligible. If you're not in one of those counties, then we'll look for you to provide an attestation that you're not eligible for those benefits. But either way, we want to make sure we're getting that upfront context and coordination. Secondly, because as I noted before, we're going to be initially limiting eligibility to these programs to low and moderate income folks. We're going to be looking for an attestation that your income is within eligibility limits for the program. And then as noted on the prior slide, we'll be looking to support purchases that are made of products on Efficiency Vermont's qualifying product list. And there are links embedded here that you can follow if you're looking for more information. Next slide. And I'll just note too, if there are any questions, please put them in the chat. We can go back to particular slides for anybody who wants, who has a questions, maybe thinking about it and wants us to go back and, address that as we get through this section. I recognize there's a lot here to process. So moving into business support, as we noted, this is a smaller bucket of funding. So we're really trying to coordinate as best we can with other programs that have been launched and again, fill gaps rather than try to duplicate anything that's already out in the market. So we began some conversations with the Agency of Commerce and Community Development about their BGAP program, understanding where we can share information, coordinate to ensure a more seamless experience and give businesses the support to build back better. We've also started conversations with the regional development corporations, which are really providing that frontline source of guidance and support to folks in their areas. Our goals, as I said, are to supplement other sources of funding and ideally to focus on small and disadvantaged businesses who might not be in a position to leverage financing, recognizing that all of the federal support available to businesses requires some kind of financing, and some businesses just are not in a position to take that on. And finally, because the funding for these business programs came from energy efficiency charge monies, we are going to need to focus on electric efficiency measures. So really a focus there on equipment and appliance replacement. And wanting to be consistent with sort of the original purpose and intent of those funds as much as possible. And we can go to the next slide. Finally, we mentioned there's the smallest source of funding from an Agency of Natural Resources grant that we're currently in communication with them around. We expect to leverage that to focus on addressing contractor capacity as much as possible, and to really support customers in looking to electrify their heating, either supplementally or to transition to primary electric heating. What we're anticipating is really trying to act on some of the feedback we've heard from both contractors and customers over the last couple of weeks about what's going on the ground. What we're hearing from contractors, those whose service territory aligns with flood impacted communities, is that they're already flat out. They're as much as possible prioritizing responding to flood impacted customers. We're not hearing that equipment availability is a major issue at this time. Particularly on the residential side. And we're also hearing that projects are really complex and home conditions are challenging. Everybody's starting from a different place. As people are trying to consider taking on, bigger projects, making bigger changes, we want to make sure contractors are in a position to offer them support. So we're looking to see how we can best incentivize and draw contractors who might not serve flood impacted areas to expand their territory a little bit. And we want all contractors to be encouraged to support electrification wherever appropriate, and to work to provide that sort of custom support to customers wherever possible. So the program that we're planning would provide a contractor incentive, a per project incentive up to a cap. Probably there'll be a number of projects cap for each contractor for every flood impacted customer that they're able to serve before the end of the year. We anticipate providing a bonus incentive on top of that for projects that electrify heating either on a primary or supplemental basis. We're going to try this program out with the limited funding that we have and see how it works, and then explore whether there's an opportunity to expand that. But the initial tranche of funding we anticipate can probably support between 200 and 250 projects. So we're going to put this out in the market, work with contractors, and see if it's having the impact that we hope it will. And I see there is a question coming in related to the $10,000 household cap and how that's going to be applied. And Peter, did you reply to that in the chat?
I did. Yeah. I can add to it here that $10,000 cap is specifically to the $10 million pot of money. So if we can braid different funding sources together, existing weatherization dollars with the 10 million, with the heat pump hot water heater money and the panel upgrade, then it expands the capacity for each individual resident pretty substantially.
Yep. One thing I do want to highlight though as well, because I think a lot of media reports sort of seized on that $10,000 per home amount, and I think anybody reading those reports could walk away with an impression that, okay, everybody who participates is going to get $10,000. We're really trying to structure this to meet needs as much as possible, leverage other funding sources, and fill gaps. Anybody who can do the math can probably realize that if every single person who participates in the program gets a $10,000 benefit from Efficiency Vermont, we're not going to be able to serve everybody who might be impacted. So, we're anticipating monitoring that as it goes forward, really trying to braid and leverage other resources as much as possible, and try to meet the most critical needs that people have in participating in the program. You can move to the next slide. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Hillary to speak a little bit more about the rollout timeline, as well as sort of our plans for outreach and messaging, and where we hope you can come in and support that effort as well.
Thank you, Kelly. And actually, you can just jump right into the next slide. So what we've sort of had going on, these are the dates that we're orienting around. We're really hoping to have enrollment be available on 9/1. Up to this point, we have had the Rebuilding for Resilience and Efficiency webinar, and happy to share that out with folks if it would be helpful. We are planning on a more detailed press release to go out next week to inform the public of these offers and what they might need to have ready once enrollment is open. And then we'll also be sharing out all of that information via the partner newsletter, which I believe many of you may be signed up for. So as soon as that press release goes out, you'll also be notified that that is going out. We're hoping for a press conference and promotion starting the week of the 5th, so that week of Labor Day. And then any paid promotion will be rolling over the course of the fall as needed. So we not knowing really how many applications will come in immediately, knowing that we might need to continue outreach farther into the fall. And then jumping to the next slide. Some of the customer outreach we've been talking about. So we do plan on doing a direct mail. We're going to have access to the 211 list, and we'll plan on sending out information about these programs directly to those affected. In addition, we are going to be sending more information out to a broader list of the towns impacted in case there are those that perhaps for whatever reason didn't notify 211. We'll certainly be putting out front porch forum ads, social media ads in those targeted zip codes, working with community print and looking at PSA announcements as well, and then are working very closely with our utility partners who have offered to either send out some bill inserts or put bill messaging on bills. Other channels, we are planning the press release that I just mentioned in the press conference. We're going to put out on our own social media channels information about these programs, and also create a social toolkit for partners that we'll share out in the partner newsletter with just information about the programs, content that you could post on your own social channels, or if you have newsletters yourself that you'd be willing to share out information, we'll put that content together, those social assets and that content together for you. We are planning on a website landing page that has all of this information in addition to the rebate pages. And then certainly out in our normal newsletters. And then our CS team will be doing any customer inquiry follow-up that has happened over the course of these past couple of weeks where we've been getting up to speed. So there are certainly customers that have already reached out that we'll want to follow up with. We also recognize that one of the most important elements of what we're doing will be just getting out into the communities. So we are going to have some localized tabling events, particularly in those communities that perhaps aren't as well organized, and then leveraging any local community organizers and working in collaboration with them to get out information at any booths or existing events that they might have available. We'll also be developing some collateral support, so that could look like flyers. Door hangers is something that we've talked about if we have town energy committees or other community organizers that might be willing to just kind of go door knocking, whether that's to local businesses or to homes and drop off flyers in mailboxes, something like that. And then we are tentatively planning another live webinar that just details the program for later in September and how to navigate the different program requirements with FEMA and things like that, in case folks have questions about how to sort of handle the different opportunities that might be available. And then jumping to the next.
Hillary, can I, before we had a really good
Please.
question in the chat that I just wanted to answer quickly. Melanie asked around whether or not this would become a regular set of offers from EVT, given the likelihood for future flooding and other incidents. I think that's a great question. At this point, the funding that's making this possible is a one-time pot of ARPA funding. We could consider that moving forward, but we would need to have conversations, frankly, with all of you all in terms of priorities and making sure that we're able to address other needs as they come up. So I think at this point, I'd like to put a pin in that question, but understand that yes, it's certainly going to be a consistent theme for the state as we deal with the impacts of climate change now and into the future.
Thanks, Peter. So some last things to just keep in mind. So we have received approval for this funding. Program development is actively underway. Every day we're getting closer. It will be launching in September. and we'll focus on offsetting the incremental cost of energy efficient home heating, water heating, and appliance replacement. It is very, very important that affected residents understand that they could jeopardize their FEMA application if they receive additional funding before completing the FEMA process. So they must complete the FEMA process before participating in any of the Efficiency Vermont incentives, rebates, or financing offers. You can visit efficiencyvermont.com/flood for information about our existing offers. We will be posting information about the new offers as soon as those are live. And we are also adding additional statewide opportunities there all the time, resources for customers that might exist outside of this funding. So it's a great resource. Upon launch, all of the program details will be shared out via our newsletter. So if you haven't signed up for that, would highly recommend doing that. But in the meantime, affected residents can sign up for a virtual home energy visit that Kelly talked about. That's really helpful as it's one-to-one with one of our energy consultants, and they can really help customers understand where they can replace damaged equipment with more energy efficient options. Definitely learning about the home energy loan, because it does offer that low to 0% interest financing for low and moderate income customers on all of the same products that would also qualify for this funding. So can also be a great complement to some of the funding that's coming. Research products that will qualify for the funding on our qualified products list. Anything that you see there will qualify for this funding. The one exception, and I shouldn't say exception, the one qualifying products list that we don't have live yet is the one for furnaces and boilers, but you can use the Energy Star certified or Energy Star lists that are on the EPA's website, and we've linked to those here, and we will have those qualified products lists live on our site as soon as the program launches as well. And then certainly using the Find a Pro tool to find a contractor and just begin planning that scope of work is something that folks can be doing right now. And I will turn it back over to I think Peter or Kelly.
Sure. Kelly, you had something you wanted to add?
Yeah, we've just, I wanted to note a couple things. The FEMA application deadline, registration deadline is September 12th. Thank you, Lori, for naming that. Really want to make sure folks are clear about that, and you're emphasizing that in any engagement that you have with folks that you're working with. And there is a resource specific to lower income customers, the USDA 504 Home Repair Grant Program. That's a resource we're aware of and we're including in some of our messaging. But as Hillary said, we're adding new resources all the time to the efficiencyvermont.com/flood page. And you can certainly check there if you're looking for information on the full range of support that might be available to folks who've been impacted by flooding, not exclusively the Efficiency Vermont offers. And I'll hand it over to you, Peter, to close us out.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. Really appreciate everybody joining. If you have any more questions, we're happy to stick around and answer them. Otherwise, we'll have more details coming soon in terms of programmatic elements, and we will need your support and help in getting word out and getting resources to folks who need them. So thank you, and thank you to our partners at the state who have helped make this possible, and the speed at which this has moved out. It's been tremendous, recognizing that there's a huge need out there, and that need is constantly evolving on a day-to-day basis. So.
And if you haven't already, we recommend you sign up for Efficiency Vermont's partner newsletter. I'm going to put the link in the chat. It's also in the slide deck. That's where we'll be sending out updates, specific to partners who are looking to make sure they're providing support and information to the folks they serve.
Yes, we can make the slideshow available, and the recording will be available to you as well. Great. Well, we'll hang out for a moment and just see if any more questions come in. But thank you again for your time. Lori, we agree that workforce has been and will continue to be a challenge here for sure. We are going to continue to support that. We have, trying to use our power to leverage the to try to get folks to work on these income qualifying projects. But we have ongoing other work for sure, trying to address the workforce challenge as a whole.
And just as a piece of context around that too, you might wonder, oh, why are you just doing like a small pilot to address workforce? The reality is that it's very challenging with federal funding to provide things like a trade ally incentive, so support direct to contractors, which we think is probably needed in the short term to try to address capacity issues. And so, luckily, A&R is stepping in and willing to kind of be creative and thoughtful with us in this sort of pilot process. We're hopeful that if that helps address the short-term issues, it's something we can expand upon in the future, but it's not something we expect we can leverage some of the other sources of funding to support.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We will share around the information, the slide deck and the recording. Really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.